There are a million stories out across the Queensland bush. Every person in every community has a tale to tell, lived experience of something amazing. And all it takes to find them and draw them out is someone with genuine curiosity, plenty of questions, and that rarest of all the talents, the ability to simply sit and listen. That's why recently when the Queensland Writers Centre decided to act on its long-held idea of creating a podcast and to devote the first season of that podcast to telling the stories of women on the land, it turned to Queensland Writers Centre member, teacher, writer and Dalby local Jane Hultgren to find the women and find their stories. And the result is the first season of a podcast called Telling Our Stories to the World. And the first season itself is simply called Queens of the Land.
When I first came out, before we even got married, Kieran had a piggery. And I did actually used to help in the piggery.
Did you?
But
this is when you're dating.
I know, it would be impressive. And then once we got married, those pigs stink. And the thing is, if you've ever been with someone who works in a piggery, you cannot get the smell out of their clothes, out of their skin. It is.
And what does it smell like? Like what is it, like an abattoir? Oh,
basically.
Oh.
Queensland Writers Centre asked me, "Hey Jane, do you know any women who live on the land around where you are?" I was like, pretty much all the chicks I hang out with.
The idea was simple. Chat to the girls she had in mind about their lives and find their stories. Pretty much an open-ended brief. So, over the next few months, that's exactly what Jane did, whenever she could actually pin them down.
These girls are busy girls too. Quite often they are not only working on the land, but they've also got other part-time jobs or even full-time jobs. One of the girls, Hamey, she's like, "Janie, I don't have much time. My kids have got swimming lessons at 4. Can I meet you at the pool?" And I was like, "Sure, mate." And we just sat on the side of the pool. I asked her some questions while she had her kids' swimming lessons.
Perfect.
And my mate Mandy, she's in my staff room right next to me, so I turned to her at lunch and I said, "Mandy, tell me about your land." And then that led to me going to her farm, where we just had the best time, just going on her 4x4 around her farm, just learning all about their lives.
They got here in 44-degree heat for the first week. It's picking melons manually. We've seen young ladies lose up to 10 kilos and turn themselves into lean, mean fighting machines by the end of the season. We had an English couple once. I thought we'd...
Jane's stories first came to life as articles in the Queensland Writers Centre's own magazine. But then, the idea that some of them would be perfect for the centre's podcast vision was raised. It was an idea that initially had Jane absolutely terrified.
Oh my God, if by put off you mean like so bloomin' anxious I felt nauseous, yes. Being a part of this evolving creative project was so different to what I'm used to. So like I said, originally it was like, having a chat to some of my mates with my phone, recording it, like really high-tech stuff. And then talking to them as well under that original idea of it, which was it's going to be magazine article, to what it became. Yeah, I was very daunted by it. Also for the women who I'd recorded, it was a case then of going back to them and saying, "Hey, F&K Media Company saw something in your story and they think that it's a story that is really worth telling. How do you feel about that?" And for a couple of the girls, they had to really think about it and go and talk to their husbands, obviously, because it's personal information that they share and really personal stories. And they took a long time to consider it.
All day. And then I come home and I just want some peace. Whereas he's been on his own all day. So he'd probably like to sit down and have a drink and have a chat.
And your tank is empty.
And I'm just going, ugh.
And like when your husband's gone with farming, like he's just gone.
Oh, yeah.
Because over the 5 or so months Jane had spent time interviewing her friends across the Western Downs, they had bared their souls in ways they never had the chance to do in the day-to-day quick catch-ups that are part of life for busy women on the land.
Some of these women that I interviewed, I have known for 17 years and yet didn't know these certain parts of their lives. Tomorrow, my beautiful friend, Tara, her episode airs, and in her episode she tells the story of her daughter, Francesca, who was born at 20 weeks, I believe.
Bad infection. We went to a specialist in Brisbane and he said there's not enough amniotic fluid, so her lungs aren't going to develop properly. And we had to decide whether we would have a termination. And we both went, can't do it. Can't end a child's life without knowing for sure what's going to happen. So we hung on.
Holy shit, Tara. And ever since I started at school, I've known about Francesca, but I've never sat down with Tara and her husband Kieran and heard the whole story. And that was just, I mean, it was beautifully harrowing story, and I was so privileged to hear, and I felt like I learnt so much about her and what she'd been through and what so many women go through, and we don't ever find the time to hear that story, you know?
6 o'clock in the morning, finally someone comes in for like an internal exam and she says, oh my God, there's a foot. And I said, I know. Pretty sure I said that when I came in at 4 a.m. Pretty sure I said that.
I have a foot. Can I have a hand, please?
So then they went into emergency mode, and then I said my husband's hours.
I felt like that night, like it was her and I sitting at the kitchen table having a chat, and Tara said to me when she went through a couple of drafts with Katie and Frank, and she wasn't sure how she felt about sharing the story at that sort of scale, and so they worked together on that. And then I remember after Tara had given her tick to the final version, she said it was such a beautiful experience for her, and it was really healing to hear her story told from her point of view, but also from ours as well. Like hearing her story back, she really appreciated it, and she thought it was a beautiful treatment of it, and a beautiful like tribute to Francesca and her life, and to have that. It felt so special to be able to create that with her, for her, and I'm really inspired by her and in awe of her. They celebrate Francesca's birthday on their farm, and they get helium balloons and have a cake. And I remember one day Tara said, I give myself that day. Absolutely. Like I do the cake and the balloon with the kids, and then at night I take out her stuff and I let myself cry. I let myself fall apart every year. I give myself that. And she does it on her own, and then she packs it back up.
Till the next year.
Yeah, and then the next morning goes and puts on a show. The idea behind this podcast is that we quite often live in these binaries in our society. You know, we've got country people versus city people, men versus women, all of those different opposing sorts of groups of people and thoughts. But the most beautiful thing and almost powerful thing and transformative thing about storytelling is that by hearing people's stories told in this way, in such a personal, emotive and real way, we can increase our empathy and understanding for the other. And by doing that, you know, that only makes us better individuals, better families, better town, better society. And I love that about this idea, that the fact that somebody could tune in for 20 minutes and go, oh my God, I've never thought about how it would be if I was in a situation where I live in Dalby, but I need Brisbane, and I can go to Brisbane obviously, but the extra effects of you can't have your farmer husband there, you can't have your people around, like it's incredibly difficult. And I hope by people hearing that story and understanding, that's how you get change to happen, like you were saying. Hopefully that will change some hearts and minds.
Who is this podcast for? Who should subscribe to it?
That's such a great question, and something that I'm really proud to say My 10-year-old daughter, Lucy, loved the camel episodes and loved the watermelon episodes. My 8-year-old son really enjoys it, and my 82-year-old mother.
There you go.
Male, female, everywhere in between. And something that I really got a huge kick out of, David, was husbands of the women that we interviewed, messages from them saying, this is not a bad listen. So honestly, I think there's something in it for everyone.
Absolutely.